Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for being here with us. I'm Sokio from New Latine Wave, an organization that aims to bring in artists, Latinx artists, into different spaces in New York. And we have organized this conversation with Kate Ferrer Gallery. And so we have this topic, Transiciones, transitions. And so we have invited Chueca, artist and curator, and she's participating at the fair too. Sofía Reeser-del Rio, she is the Clemente Center Associate Director of Programs, and the Director of New Latine Wave. So we will have some slides. I will show CJ's work and talk about it, and also we'll know more about the Clemente Center. Sofía will talk a little bit about it. And I have a starter, which is freedom is complicated. That's something that people who migrate start figuring out really early on, especially people who comes from countries that have some difficulty, a dictatorship, for example, or violence. But that sentence comes from a movie that I stumbled across this week after many years. I didn't see it before this week. This movie is from 1981, and it's called Moscow in the Hudson, from Paul Mazursky, and it's starred by Robin Williams. And it's the story of Russian circus saxophone player who decided to defect in New York, in Bloomingdale's. And it seems like a nice comedy. It's obviously the product of the Cold War, and this is, I mean, if you pay attention to the movie today, you like it. I encourage you. You will find it on Netflix. But at the time, it didn't make so many riddles. People didn't like it really, and you can see why. It's because it wasn't committed to the American, idea of what freedom is. In fact, it was questioning that. But more importantly, it wasn't depicting white people. The whole movie revolves around Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Italians, and Russians, and black people. So it wasn't very appealing. So this idea that freedom is difficult is because we are always questioning, why are we here? And when I see CJ's work, Seeds, or these new paintings of this, how do you call them? Because they don't have a name.
You know what? I don't know the name either. But
oh, you need to grab a mic.
Sorry. So they are like airport runways?
Yeah, exactly.
So they're where the airplanes arrive or depart?
Mm-hmm. So we will see these pictures in a second. So the idea is that, why are we here? What are we experiencing? Are we inside the plane? Are we departing? Are we arriving? And it's a surprise? Or, that, what are you experiencing as an artist coming to New York? So let's go to one of these things. Rapidly. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, let's go to this one. I'm sorry. So that's kind of the question I wanted to start. what do you see there? Why do you start painting and making these ceramics, actually, these sculptures?
Why?
Why?
So first, one thing that I like from New York and from many other cities is the fact that we come from many different backgrounds, and ceramics are in our daily basis. No, we eat in ceramics, we have plates, but also our cultures. Most of them have been working with ceramics, from China to England to Morocco to Peru to Colombia to even Native Americans, you know. And that's something that we all relate almost from our wire in our DNA. And that's something that, for me, since the beginning when I started to work, you will see later some walls I did with ceramic tiles. I was fascinated by the fact that they can endure centuries, but also they can break and get destroyed very easily. So when I started to do the ceramic windows was also because I wanted to have, I was working with the idea of the immigration or the limits we have as people all the time, like in the same place, living between walls. And I like the ceramic, the windows of the airplane, because it's a very easy way to talk about transitions, like the fact, what we are talking right now. And then I also like the 0 points, the points of like the no places, where like is the space where like you are not either there or there, you are in between, and it's a pause, no? And this pause is a space also of vulnerabilities, you know, where like you think what's coming or what you're leaving behind. And that's the reason why. And the series is called We Are Night and Day, and it's a yin and yang, and it's a part of our nature to be both, you know, to come from a crisis and then to go to a very bright moment, and vice versa. So,
when do you start making these sculptures?
I started first, I did a few drawings on 2017, and I actually show here, and then I wanted to be, I work a lot with sculpture, so I wanted to have an objectuality, like to be, to have a weight and to have a profile and so on. So in 2019, I did the first show. This show, it was in a moment that was also a sad moment for me. A very good friend of mine committed suicide, and it was after a crisis. She had her mother die, and she couldn't take it, and she couldn't get over it, and also her business was not good. So I dedicated the first show to her, and it was called to you, Catherine, my brightest friend, how much I wished I could turn your night today. So the whole show was like a room of these 10 ceramic windows, and then one black room with these highways, and then another room with like a white room with these waterfalls, because I work a lot with water, because that's another thing that you will see. It's I think water has this beautiful quality of running everywhere, and you can't stop it. So like rivers, you know, that eventually end on the ocean and mix with other rivers like Australia. So yeah, this is how I started.
Thank you. Do you need some water?
No, good.
Okay. I can be totally real with that. So let's move on. So we have here different views.
I'm personally curious, Cecilia, with your incorporation of text in your work, and how, or if you want to elaborate more maybe on that process, what comes first, what happens later, and that exchange between the visual and using the text also as an object itself, as a visual conduit, not just in the words and their meaning. Sorry.
Yeah, it's strange because it takes much more time for me to do the text than the windows, because I make each of the letters by hand, which is just an obsessive thing to to do something that I could be doing it with casting them. But my brother is a poet, and my parents are researchers, and they both write. And so I grew up in a family of writers, and I also write in a more humble way. So I like to introduce, I think that poetry has this, words have this depth that I like to incorporate. And sometimes I think that the visuals are left to the people, no? Like when you read anything, you know, like there is a whole other world which is beyond what you are just seeing, no? So I like that in this case, I am the river, I'm the air you used to breathe, and you are the ocean I used to swim, and it's too young.
Yeah. I think relating it back to transitions, just thinking about the immigrant experience and then the language usage of English versus Spanish and that interplay, and that state of thinking, and how, I guess in my mind, like you have the text is more of like the rational mind, like the right brain, and then you have the visual or the other elements, or the poetic element, even though it's writing, it's pushing against that. And the same sort of maybe with which language are you speaking in, right? Like, is it Spanish, is it English, is it more of like your dialect?
Yeah, in this case, it's a piece that is much more personal, but it's also that, you know, like when we are very different, each of us, we are kind of islands, no? So the idea of the air and or the sky with the ocean, we always think them together, but they are completely different, you know? But when you see them, they seem to be in an eternal affair because they are together, and the horizon is always this very beautiful line that we see everywhere, no? So in this case, I brought it to a relationship between two, you know, like they are dramatically different. Are maybe getting apart or so, you know? So this, actually, the name of this installation is We Used to Be Una Canción de Amor, so it's como, we used to be a love song or so.
Thank you. I mean, at some point I thought this would be more linear, but I think we need to start jumping into things. So, Sofía, you work at El Clemente Center, which is a long-time institution in the Lower East Side. I would like to know, what do you think about the work with the migrants that you are doing, and if you can tell us a little more about what are you doing today versus what has been done in the past?
Yeah, of course. A little bit to tie it into what Cecilia has been addressing with her text, and you mentioned poetry, and I think it's very important to note that the Clemente Sotoveles is, the full organizational name is the Clemente Sotoveles Cultural and Educational Center, and the namesake is of a poet and political prisoner from Puerto Rico, specifically from Lares, a town where there was a horrible massacre because of the fight for Puerto Rico's independence. and how poetry has been an anchor of the Lower East Side, still known as the Loisaida community. Loisaida as the translation, or not really translation, more of an appropriation, how do you say that, right? But it's how it sounds, and you just pronounce it in Spanish, so it's Loisaida. Basically, you're trying to say Lower East Side. Say it fast, say it with an accent, you get Loisaida Spanish. And I think that that is very powerful and emblematic of a lot of the experience and movements that have happened in New York that have made the spaces for immigrants to be able to produce the work and have the exposures and even in these moments of transition, have a voice, right? And through poetry, which is one of the most political, I think, movements where you, like I was saying, kind of bridge the rational and the artistic into one, the political and the poetic into one. So back to your question. The Clemente was founded in 1993, but before that it had been occupied by activists, members of the community, both artists, and organization called Solidaridad Humana that basically gave a lot of opportunities to individuals to better their English and just give them some like after school and other types of training. But then artists kept coming in and occupying the space, and it's still one of the most subsidized and affordable spaces in the Lower East Side. And the way that we keep serving immigrants community is through actively being a responsive reactionary space, one where, like it says here, sweat equity and racial imaginaries. In this case, it was puppetry, but we still act in that sense. Like we still put a lot, and we value the work that others are putting in that needs to be represented. So the space is comprised of resident spaces for studios, long-term and short-term. We have micro-residencies that are more short-term that facilitate more immediate needs of artists that want to experiment or have a project, might not reside in New York, but have projects in museums or other spaces, and we facilitate with that type of space. This is the facade of the building before it was slightly renovated. And we also have 4 theaters. 2 are run by organizations that have been there since the beginning, Teatro Latine and Teatro Sea. Teatro Sea is specifically focused on children's puppet and theater, really fun. So if you have kids, highly recommend it. And Teatro Latine is a space that primarily focuses on Latino theater making, but they also open the space for any type of genre and theater productions and experimentation. And then we also have the Flamboyant Theater, which is a large kind of like block box theater setting, so it's very malleable and adaptable for the needs of whoever is using it, and it serves both as partnerships, rentals, or work that we produce. And we have 2 galleries. So one is in the lower floor, Elias Gallery, and the second floor, which is Abrazo Interno Gallery. Abrazo Interno is taken from a poem from Clemente. So we're always thinking about honoring his legacy within the building. And we've really, as an organization, I like to describe ourselves as an umbrella organization that houses many. So we're almost like La Mamá Gallina, no? That story, we have all the pollitos underneath. In that, we are always kind of like looking at others and welcoming you to come and do projects. So the most recent one where we responded to the current asylum-seeking needs of immigrants was a one-night event called EPA. So we're really thinking about how do we bring joy into the conversation of migrant, how do we create mutual aid and spaces and intersect them with art. So really how art is essential for the civic and mental health of our communities, right? So I think I'm gonna leave it at that because I keep rambling and I feel like I'm not answering your question properly. But yeah, we work with a lot of artists and partners throughout the city and abroad to really serve the needs of the community in the broadest sense. So we do from festivals, coat drives, all mixed together, workshops. It's a beautiful experience. You should all come if you haven't.
So from the governance of the building, how many people is a migrant today?
Ooh. Currently, like in
Currently,
this case?
or
I mean, I
like-
think that is such a hard thing to pinpoint. I think that it would be unjust of me to be the person to say. I think if we really go to the core of it, aren't we all migrants? Aren't we all not from this place? So yeah, but I do think that in our core mission, the BIPOC and Latino communities are predominantly represented and made sure to be part of the conversation and be supported because of their role in occupying that space and identifying it as a space for the community and of radical transformation, cultural transformation. And I think that ignoring that path would not be just. But
So both of you are not from here. I know that both of you have lived in different places. Born in Peru, but you spent your first years in Mexico, and so I would like to know more about that, how traveling and transitioning from one place to another form your idea, perceptual ideas.
So for me, it's like a condition, no? Like we are all all the time changing. So even in New York, we are all the time changing houses. Very few people have lived in the same house since are here. No? That happened to me since I was a kid. So since 2 months old, and I was telling you guys, there is an image there, like you can see on the very first one. Yeah. There is well, I was very interested of homelessness when I was a kid, because by the time I was 15, I was already left. I was living already in my 10th house or so. My parents moved many times, and like the very first one, you go to the one before this one. Yeah. No,
Okay.
So I brought these images just to talk about these are walls I took when I was 17 years old, and these are abandoned houses. So I used to jump into these abandoned houses in Peru and take these photos of the walls, and they were at night, and usually they were drug addicts inside, or people that have mental challenges. So, and they move a lot, and they were and there was the series of these images were my first solo show, and my thesis too. But for me, it was always talking about the walkers, the people that are still on the road or coming. My father came from the Andes of Peru, and he had to completely change his life because of the river too high on his town and took away all the fields, and they ended up with nothing in one day, you know. So if we go to, so if you continue to,
Yeah.
oh, yeah. So these are all images when I was a kid, but so yes, continue. Is that,
Yeah.
yeah, the next one. Yeah, this one. So this is a show I did called Two Blue Skies, and it's related to that. So you see the next one. So this is a river of ceramic potatoes that become stones. And in this show, like, I forgot, okay. Well,
Before.
so, yeah, the one before.
That's the one.
Sometimes when I have in my head I had a presentation and then like it's completely different now. It's difficult for me to like rearrange, but so this is I like to talk a lot about also how we are in a way divided into as Latin Americans, and also many of you that have lived in countries that were colonized. So in this case, this blue on the right, on the left in this case, it's the blue that we inherit from the Spanish and the Portuguese, and it's the azulejo, no? That it's everywhere. If you go to Spain or to Portugal, and then if you go all Latin America, you will see it, you know, for a lot. And it was also from North Africa, so and then moved to many places. This blue, it's and the ceramics is kind of like very recognizable for me. So for us, we were changed dramatically when we were colonized. So and the other blue is the blue that is on the sky everywhere in the Andes of Peru and Bolivia and Ecuador and some other places. And yes. So for me, it was this duality. We are these two things too. And so I was for years building these walls, and that's why I also brought the other walls, because I've been obsessed with walls, but also the fact or the possibility to make these walls breakable, and also landscapes, you know, like where like they can be bought, you know, like everything can be something else and change, you know. So if you see the next one, like this is what I was talking about this river that ends and travels, you know, and the journey of the river is all of us, you know. So at the end, like we have this transition or these transitional moments where like, yeah, we are not just what we came from or where we are now, but the journey, you know, of coming here, or like whatever happens to us all these times, you know, becomes like what we really are. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that the journey is much more who we are, you know, than all what we inherit, you know. So in the next, this one, and I'm sorry, I'm going to stop talking, but this one I brought it because it's a series I did a few years ago called Adios Pueblo, which means goodbye town. And this piece, there were a few walls, and this piece was white, and I left it in a studio in Peru, where when I went back 1 year later, there was used as a real wall. So as a separation of a kitchen from a bedroom, from a group of Venezuelan immigrants, like 4 years ago, when there was a huge exodus of Venezuelans to everywhere. So Peru actually has a million Venezuelans right now, so which is a lot, you know. So I say to them, I'm not going to take out the wall because obviously it has a better purpose than in an art gallery, you know, it's a real wall. So they were using it in a good way. So I say, but can we do something you can write whatever you want as a bathroom? And they say, okay. So a year later, I came back and that was what they wrote. So there are things that are like, I hate the landlord to pick up the trash, to like, we are not all the same, and to much more like, meaningful things, you know. And I was invited to do a show to be part of a show at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Peru, and so we put this one. And I pair my pieces a lot with songs, and the song, it's a song that is talking about how much this person can return, how much this person misses his town, but he cannot return because it's too dangerous for this person to return. So, yeah.
Thinking of that statement, no? The fear of returning, or like not being able to return. I think that's such a truth for many of us, or our past, family members, and the impact the exile has in our psyche, right? And then the way that then we make home, the way that then we arrive. And even though we've arrived and we make these spaces like the Clemente and other spaces, or through our artistic practice, there's still that sense of being in transition, or trying to that in between, or when will I go really to that home in capital bold letters, and that feeling, right? And I tie that a little bit to what you were saying at the beginning of freedom is...
It's complicated.
It's complicated. And that notion of how it is so complicated, especially when we're still working through the lens and the language of the colonizers, right? And we're still working through that history lens and that, and those as facts. And I think the work that a lot of us are trying to do is to complicate it even more further and find new languages. And I think that's why so many of the, in my opinion, rich institutions and places that currently exist have been founded by poets, by people that are trying to break the ways in which we're made to think, if that makes sense. Like the logic, they're trying to change the logic, put it up in their heads and really think differently and push the boundary and say, well, that together makes this meaning, but if we change it or mix the languages with, let's, say Loisaida, and we're gonna write it like Loisaida, we're making a new meaning, we're making culture. And that's something very beautiful, and I see your work a lot in being actions, like being verbs. I don't know if you wanted to talk more about that, but I know that you work a lot with people, right, that are like this piece, where you're engaging with them in a way that goes beyond just what you're presenting, what people encounter in the gallery setting.
And then I became friends with one of them that he came to the show, and it was kind of a collaboration, and his name was also part of the ficha técnica, ¿cómo se dice?
The gallery
Text.
text?
Yeah, the text on the museum, because I think that also when you collaborate with other people, it has to be say that it's a collaboration. Sometimes some projects take like a few people for real, and this idea that you are the head, it's interesting, but it's also when there are so many hands, it will not be appropriate to just call yourself that, like even though you pay them, no, it's a community, it's a communal project, no. So if we go to like the next one, like talking about what I think that every time we move, for example, to a new place, sometimes it's coming from zero, no? This is a little tiny house. This is smaller than this, like half of this, that we bought in Lima, Peru. And it was in very bad state, so we took out the the door, and actually that's the width of the house. The door and the window, and destroy it, and it's called like that. The house I demolished and the house that I rebuilt. And I put the azulejos with Amazonic plates, and it's kind of literal, but it was a way to talk also about how we are constantly remaking ourselves, no? And how it will show obviously what we come from, where we come from, and you will see it, and it will shine in different lights. But yeah, it's a new configuration every year, no? And we have to kind of be okay with that. I don't know. I mean, sometimes we say like, this is me, or this was me. There are a few things that we can take along the way, but sometimes some others, they just leave us, no? And if we go to the next one, I mean, you can go all the way to the back to the last one.
Okay.
So this is a show I did last year called Mermaids in the Basement, and it's a show where like you enter. This is a little entrance to the pool. These are ceramics on my flip-flops and the flip-flops of my son, but they could be anywhere. And this is a piece I did at the Sugar Hill Museum, where it was painted. It was like a pool, and it was an attempt to think about how you will feel yourself inside water. And the sculpture in the middle, on the hole, you can see that it's my body fits that hole. And it's like a little island, but also I'm a swimmer, so it's like the two lines of the swimming pool combined. And so this space, if you see it from one side, was dark, like a full pool, and in the other side was an empty pool. And the size of each tile was the size of the tiles on the subway station. On the installation, you can hear songs of 10 different women from different parts of the world that have left their hometowns. The show was called Mermaids in the Basement, and it was curated by Blanca La Torre, and we both talked with these women that were coming from different places. And so the songs were very moving, because the songs were like, they pick up the songs. And the songs are like, talking about how they miss it. So maybe at the end of the talk I could play a song.
I wanted to add that my personal experience about migrating. I have been moving around for the last 20 years. I mean, I tried at first in 2001, and the trip was prevented by 9/11. And then I finally moved to Paris, which that was the initial plan. But after 2 months, I needed to go back. I needed to return because my dad had cancer, like very explosive, and I needed to be there. So after several attempts, I moved to Brazil. Then I spent some time in Caen, in France. Then back to Brazil, Chile, Mexico City, and then New York. You were talking about carrying stuff, all of these things that are part of this Odyssea. I still speak Portuguese. Sometimes I dream in Portuguese. I understand the nuances of those languages and culture, and when I meet people here that are from those cultures, I can understand them. But at the same time, I'm feeling always outside that. And after so many years moving away from Chile, I don't feel myself as a Chilean at all, especially because last year, I mean, I have been feeling that more and more, but I don't understand what is going on. Even if I read, newspapers or friends tell me something about what is happening, I'm like, okay, I don't know how to relate to that. But also that distance also is happening with my family. So I have an emotional distance from them. And then I live here in this space where I feel like an island. Even having really good relationships with you, for example, we are friends, but I still, I know that you can relate to that. And I was wondering if, for example, you work at Clemente, which is basically created La Mama Gallina. That's what you said. Like you wanna, hold. You created a Y gallery. I don't remember, for 10 years or something.
Yeah, 2011.
11 years, and I worked creating New Latin Wave, and those three things are examples of immigrants working towards creating a bigger family that can, create support for the ones that are coming. So, I know you stopped working with White Gallery, but how do you feel about it? You have reignited your career as an artist very recently, and as a parallel, I have done that too as a composer in the last 3 years, after just dedicated, I don't know, like 8 years to New Latin Wave. I mean, that's an ongoing endeavor, but how do you feel now in this transition from being an institution, because it was, that helped people to land and to fit in New York, and how do you feel now in relation to that past and your new role?
I think that the artist process it has a solitude that sometimes hurts, and I think that when the first years I was in New York, I came 2003 until 2006 that I opened Y Gallery. Those first 3 years, I was very active working in my own work, but I felt also lonely, and I felt like the friends were kind of coming and going, and we were like, at the time, was Fresa Salvaje and Nacote, we were dancing a lot, so, but,
which Clemente is bringing back.
yes, yes, it's nice, it's good to dance. But, yeah, the idea of creating community, and creating your community, and like, the possibility to start a whole universe that is also out of your control, because like then more people come, and then some of them are much more bossy than others. So you're like, okay, this is just do whatever you want. So yeah, for me it was a big change. Like I think it was more than a necessity, it was an urgency to create Y Gallery, and we were many, so there were 20 artists at the end. Carlos Mantiel, Carlos Mota,
Was there a residency as well component? Like,
well,
I remember something like that.
we didn't have residencies, but we were related to the Mexican Cultural Institute that will bring artists to the ICB, and also we work with different people that we will host artists, like I had a little apartment in Ludlow Street, at a tiny room where sometimes the artists will stay, and we did a lot of working visas, so, and then just basically host the artists, and we're very open-minded, so they did things that put us sometimes in trouble too, like Teresa Margolles did an installation in Jackson Heights. Our first 3 years were in Jackson Heights. That say, for the ones that don't believe it, some of the beaches in Spanish, and it was chiseled on the wall, and and some local narcos came and they were like, we don't like that. And we're like, Teresa, who doesn't have much fear, was for the first time like, oh my gosh. And we're like a little like afraid that we had to, maybe censor us ourselves. But then we were like, no, let's just leave it, because outside on the window there were the list of at the year, and this is maybe 2007 or so, 8. There were like 10,000 killings from drug dealing between and they were all quotes from different newspapers, including the New York Times, saying this year so-and-so cartel have killed so many people. And so in the second installation that she did, that there were 2 shows in a row, the second installation was a big painting of blood, which was a painting taken from real blood that she found on the street of someone that was murdered. So that kind of stuff, like we were like dealing with people that really left, so I think that for us as immigrants, we are dealing. Some of us have like happier stories, even though like in Peru we lived 20 years of terrorism, and it was also heavily related to drug dealing, but mostly with the Chinese part and some terrorist groups with the military groups that were as terrorists, and very, very bad presidents, But there were other countries and other towns that have histories of violence that were much more severe, like what's happening right now, Ukraine, in Gaza, and so many other places. So these people that leave, they leave because they live or die, and so some of the shows we did in White Gallery were related to that, because that's something that it's on my, it's like atascado en mi garganta, ¿sabes? Like I feel like all my life I've been thinking on this, and I like why we are leaving, but thank God we left, so it's complicated. Freedom is complicated.
Yeah, with that, we need to wrap up this thing. What time is it? 3:57. Do we have time for some questions? Like short?
I think a couple, like some audience questions maybe.
Thank you. So, anybody? Questions of any kind? We're open.
Hi guys. I'm wondering what you feel like is the ideal environment to receive this kind of work. Like when you want to present in a gallery or in a museum, what is the best setting for that, or what creates that? Or when you're curating and you're thinking about these kinds of themes, is there a particular place or way that can be achieved that feels like it makes the work better received for the public?
Thanks for the question. I think I'm always thinking about that a lot. I think being now in a cultural center where you have galleries, but you're not confined to the history or like the stereotypes of like what a museum or gallery setting really proposes. It's like liberating as someone that's organizing or working with others that are wanting to propose things for that space, where you can really challenge the 4 walls, kind of go outside of it, or think about holistically like other instances in which you can sort of extend the conversation or go deeper into something. I know that with you we're talking a lot about oral histories, and thinking about the voice of the community, or how can exhibition that will be historical or will be touching upon historical objects, moments, can incorporate or become alive and not just stagnant. So I think for me, it's really thinking about the different formats that we can employ. And recently I was thinking about curating as the network of roots in a tree and how they converse between each other, and even when a tree is dying next to it, they still send nutrients to it, and how when I'm curating, I'm not alone, like I'm in conversation with the others, not just the artists, but whoever comes through the space or the institution, you know, whoever's housing us, the book, like all of this, and really trying to see not the separation, but like the threads that are invisible and those in between states as part of whatever is being shown or displayed. If that makes sense? But that's sort of where my headspace is. And in thinking of the Clemente also and as a amoeba that's, you know, so malleable for different practices and pushing like experiments, allowing a lot of experimentation. Yeah.
Anybody else? Well, thank you. Thank you for being with us today and trying to figure it out about our own transitions. Thank you.